everyone, excited to go over Infinity, setting up a knowledge base article build out on how to structure it, whether internally or sharing this potentially even externally, but with more of an internal focus. So I'm just creating a new board, KB template build out. Let's go ahead and say continue. This tutorial is under the assumption that you do understand most Infinity basics, and a lot of the content I'm going over you have a background in. If you don't, that's totally okay. If you want to jump in this way, I learned best that way. But I do recommend understanding some of the Infinity fundamentals that we're going over, of course. So I'm going to build out our folder here, and I like to make this folder our root folder, essentially meaning all other folders we build out will be nested underneath this main folder. Just going to call this the knowledge base, and then I'm going to add a subfolder under here. I'm going to call our template folder, as this is going to be the folder that we're using, and we're going to be probably cloning to be used in other areas. So this is going to be that base template. Okay, I'm going to pick table because that's by far my favorite option. I'll add a new item in here and say, we'll call this new hire process. Okay, that's going to be the title of our article, and now we need to build out all of these projects, all of the metadata and attributes here. So I'm going to add a column. A couple things come to mind, right? When we're working on knowledge base articles, we're going to want to know who created it, when did they create it, when was it last updated, a whole bunch of metadata. So I'm going to come down here, scroll to the very bottom, and you can see Infinity gives us a few of these already by. So I'm going to create a by. We could call that author if we wanted to. It will automatically stamp the system creator in Infinity. Now we'll go in, we'll add those other items, updated at, created at. We're going to do created at. Drop that in here, and then we'll add updated at. And then we'll save that. Now I'm going to add another date attribute that I'm going to use pretty heavily, and it's called expired at or expire at. Actually, let's not make it past tense. This is my preferred date formatting, and we'll say this is when this article is going to expire, and we'll save that. We don't really want to have to manage this date field at all, and so we'll get into automations and how Infinity is actually going to manage this for us, and it will actually feed into all of our filtering. It's going to feed into reminders to come back to articles. It's going to do a bunch of that magic for us. So we're just going to leave it there. Now, a lot of places already have Word documents or processes on how to do things. So if you're a mover or shaker, or maybe you're just wanting to change the way your department works, you're going to have a lot of this documentation already on paper, ideally a Word document or PDF, not actual paper. So I'm going to put an attachment function in here for existing documentation. Right, so we don't have to remake the wheel here. We can just come in here and upload that existing documentation. And Infinity has a really nice way of viewing files, if you haven't already seen it, right in the system. You don't have to download it or any of that jargon. So we'll add existing documentation. Other attributes we're going to add in here are the tag attributes. I'm just going to do tags. So this is, I'm thinking like you'll be using it for what are the main things someone might be searching for or wanting this to find, like, oh, HR department, or oh, process or operations change, or tips and tricks, right? These are tags that people might be searching against or wanting to save attributes as. So I'm going to allow multiple selection because we can have more than one of this type of attribute. Allow creating new labels. Yes, I'll talk about this if you don't know what that does. Allow empty. Sure thing. Let's call this tips and tricks. We'll call this process, and then we'll call this like we'll just actually kick that off and we'll save it. So now that we have tags in here, we can actually select more than one if we wanted to, or we can actually at any point write a label in here, and if it doesn't exist, like, oh, HR new hire, like, oh, I don't see it, enter, and it'll actually add that tag, which will then be metadata that can be used by anyone else on this Infinity board. So it makes it really nice for data management because we're ensuring that everyone's kind of using the same data across that, but it also has that flexibility. So it's pretty cool. So we'll leave tags in here. So let's go ahead and open up our task and we'll see what we got. So we got new hire process, who created it, let's move that to the bottom. Tags, let's move that up. And then we have a bunch of dates, right? But we don't actually have any content besides our ability to upload it. So we'll add a new attribute, we'll call it long text, and we'll call it KB details. KB standing for knowledge base. You can add some default values in here, which is kind of cool. So if you're wanting like specifics, like scope, department, I'm just doing all caps, but you can do whatever you want. Scope, like why do we need this document? Department, who is it for? And then instructions, like make sure you include screenshots or whatever you might do internally. I could save that, and then now every one of these KB articles is going to kind of pull in these defaults. But of course, you can change that. You don't have to do this, but it is kind of nice, right? Okay, awesome. So we have these main attributes here of an article. Let's take a look at any other attributes we might want in here. Long text, links. Yep. Let's add some URLs. Let's just URL. Because a lot of times you might be saying like, oh, this is the website you're going to go to, or these are the things that you might need, and putting in nice links to jump you to those resources might be a really good item, or a video that maybe has already been published on the process. This is a nice little attribute to have. We'll keep scrolling through here. Buttons, those type of automations, we probably won't need any of those. Vote. Awesome. Yes. We can do a vote, or we can do a rating. Rating is going to be for everyone. Vote actually allows for each person to vote about this. So we could say something like helpful, or you could give it maybe a star or a thumbs up. Say, hey, was this actually helpful to you? And then people can actually vote towards it. It'll tell you who voted it up or down, which is going to allow you to see which articles are actually helpful, whether internally or externally. This is a really nice attribute we want to probably tick in here. Okay, awesome. So this is our table view. Let's go ahead and thin this down a little bit. We don't need all this created date stuff. Existing documentation tags. Let's drag KB details up here. Awesome. URL. Great. So we could add a status in here of expired, at new, different stages of the KB article. We're not going to do that in here. What we're going to do is we're going to build everything off of that expired date. So if you remembered just a few minutes ago, we added this date field called expire at. So when are we going to expire this? I could say expire at, not, when like bump it out to the 9th, right? And then after that date, it would filter off and fall into expired bucket and a whole bunch of things. But we don't want to be managing this date all the time, because we know how users are. We forget to do this stuff. Even super users forget to do stuff like this. So let's go into automations, and let's talk about our expiration date and managing that. So let's say set expiration date and when a new item is created. And then we're going to say do this action, and we're going to say update an item, and we're going to set our expire at date with an offset of maybe 1 month. This is way too short in my humble opinion. And we could say, maybe once an article is created, it's going to live for 12 months. After 12 months, it's going to expire and fall off our list, which I think is a pretty reasonable amount of time. After a year, if there hasn't been any updates or changes to an article, it's probably not that relevant anymore. So we'll mark it as with an expire flag. It will drop off, and we'll set this. So now when a new item is created, and we'll call this new article, right? Infinity is going to flag down here in a minute, and it's actually going to process that automation and stick in our expire at data inside here, which is pretty cool. But we want a little bit more, right? We want to be able to know when items are being updated, and we want to update our expiration date. Like, right, if I change my KB details, then my expired at flag needs to change. So let's go into automations again. When an item is created, change expiration date. Great. Let's create a new automation, and we'll call this update expiration date. And when we can say when item is updated, for some reason I'm not seeing it. Oh, attribute value changes, and we can say KB details. then we're going to move our expiration date. So we're going to update an item, and we're going to take our expired at date, and we're going to bump that out from its current date, maybe again 12 months. 12 months after trigger time. So then if the KB details is modified or changed, then we're going to bump out our expiration date, right? So this is going to be really nice because then we're going to be able to control both of these automatically inside of Infinity. So let's actually put our expiration date on. Expire at. Okay, yep, good. It did kick in the automation, bumped it out a full year. And then let's come in here and let's actually test that update. Of course, you can make it tied to anything that you want. So I made a change to scope. So this will recalculate and put it out to the same date of 3/7. Yep, there it goes. Awesome. So it ran that calculation. I changed it, and then it bumped it out a full year. So now let's actually filter our template, and we'll rename this to... You could leave this as active articles, and then I'm going to duplicate it out to include inactive articles over here. If you wanted them fully hidden, you could not do this and then manage it on the root level. But most times people might need to be searching across active or inactive. So let's go ahead and duplicate this out. Rename this called expired articles. Right. Awesome. We have two. We need to add our filters, of course, to make sure we're adjusting this correctly. So let's say our expire at is after now, right? We want it to be after current time. And then we're going to do this and we'll say our expire at is before now. So nothing here. These guys are active. If I were to bump this maybe to, let's bump this out to 2022, and then we'll go back into March, and I'll say this maybe expired last Saturday. It drops off here and it makes its way into expired, right? Now, if I did come into expired and I'm like, oh no, this isn't expired, and we can say IT department, right? I can make a change to the article, and now because of that change, it will trigger Infinity to update that flag, and boom, there it goes. It's no longer expired and kicks over here. Of course, you can manually update this, but this makes it so you don't have to manage it or think about it, and you're only looking at articles that have been updated in the last 12 months, which is super nice, in my personal opinion. Okay, so let's get our item on lock. If you're wanting to do just one folder, I mean, you could technically add in groupings and different departments, but this will get bigger ideally over time. I mean, this will grow in size as your departments start using this more and more. And so we're going to want this kind of, I would think, imagined in folders. I'm going to go up to the knowledge base, this top level here, and then I'm going to add a table structure. I'm going to pull in subfolder, top right here. This is going to pull in anything from the items underneath. And then I can rename this to expired articles. So now across all of these folders, I'll be able to see what has expired. And then I can actually group this by my source folder. So it'll be the template, but you can imagine this would say like HR department, IT department, and then I can have different ones that are expired in here, right? And then the same thing, the expire at is before now. So I have no articles that are expired. But if I did down in this template, have one that was expired, then it would make its way back and up into that bucket here in the knowledge base. Which this is why I like to do the root folders. You're not managing just one folder individually. I created this view that is now going to be for all of my folders. And I could add, other helpful things in here. So now with this template kind of structured, I'm going to adjust my views, make sure everything looks good. I'm going to duplicate it out, name it to our departments, and then talk about how to build out some automation to make sure that we're managing our content well across our knowledge base. So I'm going to go in here to this customize. I'm going to want helpful URL we don't necessarily need. I don't care about the expiration date. This looks good. And then we can also I like the small. Some people really like the large because you can get a lot more of this information in here. You also can see a lot more tags kind of fall in here. So you might prefer the large. In fact, you might even prefer a different view altogether for your knowledge base. But we're going to keep it like this. And maybe we'll drop it back to medium in here. So an article name, description, existing documentation if they have it. Put that out. We could even put this all the way to the left to make users want to click on it and let us know. Let's sort this by our helpful ratings from our highest ratings down. That way, if we have a couple items in here, then when they're thumbed up, they'll sort themselves higher. Yep. This is just letting us know this is going to be filtered out because it doesn't have that expire date. But Infinity will come around behind us and tick in that expire date with these new items. So don't necessarily worry about that. Okay, great. Yep, there it goes. They're falling off because they're now catching the expire dates sticking on. Great. Now let's go ahead and duplicate this out into a couple different departments. So let's duplicate this. Don't do what I did. You want to duplicate without items. Otherwise, you'll get an exact copy. So let's do this. Duplicate without items. This is going to actually follow all of our sorts, all of our filters, all of our pages up here, which is nice. So just make sure that your template is the latest that you always kind of want it to be. And if you are like the administrator over this, you can set up like folder sharing where you actually can make it private and then no one else can see it but you, your template. And I would recommend that. Otherwise, people will be modifying your template and you will be sending them an email. Okay, awesome. So let's go ahead and rename this to, we'll call this will be the IT department under knowledge base. Put that in there. Man, I don't know why I did that. Duplicate without items. HR department. Operations. We'll call it MIS department, right? You can see there's obviously we could add a whole bunch in here where people could start coming in here and uploading their articles. Since this is all permission based, you could only let them see specific articles, of course. But from here, I'm going to pause and I'm going to fill out some of this data so we can see how it looks at the top level and then how we can start managing this from an administrative point. Okay, so I went ahead and built out a lot of these items and I'm just going through and adding the tags, which is pretty nice. Sick time for HR department. I went to operations. I added a bunch of tags in here, PowerShell, and you can see as I'm adding them, it's building all these tags, which is then usable in other areas, right? They won't obviously reference PowerShell, but like it's pretty nice because all this is available in here, which is pretty cool. So now that we kind of have a lot of this built out, and then emails, right? Process, server update, it's a process, it's a schedule. Add that. That can be used for network diagrams. Network, great. Right, and then it's also a process, right? So we can pull this in. So let's go ahead and go up here to our knowledge base at the top, and we can see we have a bunch of different departments. It's pulling in here. We can see it looks, in my opinion, pretty nice in the layout and everything. But now let's talk about how to manage some of this, right? So we have expiration dates and all of those things, but we want to make sure that articles don't expire and that they are kept up to date. So we can go up to automations here. I'm going to go into create a new automation, and then we can talk about how to build out many different automations, but we could say alert article expiration, and then we can say date arrives, expire at, and when do we want to know, like how many days, weeks, right? So we could say, oh, we want to know 4 weeks before it expires. Don't alert me at 12, alert me at 7 a.m. in our time zone, and it's going to kick off an alert, right? And then it's going to say, you know, who do you want to notify? And you can set it to all members, specific people, so I could select specific people on the board that need to know about it. which is pretty cool. So I'm going to send it to all members and say, we'll say article, put $1 in here, and say item is about to expire. Please update the content before the expiration date. And I'll put it in here by putting $1 in again and type in expire at. And now it's going to send off an email to all members. Obviously, you might want to thin this down a little bit about the content before the expiration date, right? You can use a members attribute if you wanted to track like assigned members or article managers. You could assign it to them, and then it would only email them as the managers. You can do that, which is good. I'm going to save this automation, and then I'm going to go back into it. I'm going to add a condition, and we'll talk a little bit what we could do with conditions. So we could open up our source folder, click on that, and we could say it is IT department. Now I can control that this article alert will go out to the IT department, and I could select a specific member in the IT department that's managing this, so that they're only seeing their pertinent alerts for their articles saying, hey, this is going to expire, this is going to expire. And then on top of it, we could add in more than just, a month out. We could add a few days out too, and they can come in here and then review the article and make sure it's up to date. Otherwise, it will just fall off automatically. So that's pretty nice. You can control it that way if you're wanting to in Infinity. So there's a bunch you can do with automations, but this is the main one that we're going to set up, is just that, hey, when it's before it expires, send an alert to everyone on the board that this article is about to expire and make sure it gets handled and done. You'll probably want to thin that down specifically to your needs. That's the main content that I wanted to cover for the knowledge base build out. At any point, just want to point out, you can't export this to PDF, so you can actually create a printable version of all this hard work that we just went through. So that is available to you. But of course, you can add more other attributes, ratings, priorities, departments in here if you're wanting to change it. But this is the core. As always, if you want this template, feel free to reach out to me, jschaa@beginningtobegin.com, and I'll be happy to supply this template over to you. If you haven't picked up Infinity and you're interested, my referral link is in the description, and I would appreciate that, of course. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day. Bye.